in our reverence for the court.
Ginsburg authored powerful dissents in cases involving abortion, voting rights, and pay discrimination against women.
Now, President Trump issuing a statement on the passing of Justice Ginsburg, calling her a titan of the law. He praised her brilliant mind and powerful dissents at the Supreme Court and commended Ginsburg on her ability to disagree without being disagreeable toward one's colleagues or different points of view. So with just 43 days until the election, President Trump is now faced with a critical decision, filling a vacancy on the Supreme Court. Democrats are, of course, crying foul, saying President Trump should wait until after the election. The president, however, says the process to nominate a justice will begin very soon. And Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is promising that the nominee will get a vote in the Senate this year. Joining me now from Washington, D.C., representing Florida's 1st Congressional District and author of the new book, Firebrand, Dispatches from the Front Lines of the MAGA Revolution, Congressman Matt Gaetz. Congressman, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, Steph.
Congressman, congratulations on your new book. I will get to that in just a minute. But first, I wanted to get your reaction to the passing of Justice Ginsburg and also your thoughts on whether or not her seat should be filled before the election.
I went to law school at really a transition time when the majority of law students were transitioning from being majority men to being majority women. And so many of my colleagues in the law looked up to Justice Ginsburg as a real inspiration and as someone who paved the way for a lot of great legal minds to be able to enter the profession and to be able to excel at the highest level. When it comes to filling her seat, I think the president has a constitutional obligation to make a nomination, and I think the Senate has a constitutional obligation to fulfill their responsibility to advise and consent. And I have a message to the president's supporters in places like Alaska and Maine. Do not allow your vote to be taken for granted. You should be demanding that Senators Murkowski and Collins take a vote on this issue, up or down. They should be given the opportunity to analyze the nominee of the president, but they should not be able to simply punt for political expedience. And I think that the whole MAGA nation needs to step forward and demand action on the president's nominee one way or the other.
Yeah, and predictably, Democrats are totally opposed to President Trump's efforts to move without a delay here. But if you look back to 2016, the Democrats were singing a different tune when it came to Obama's Supreme Court nominee, Merrick Garland, and we have video of it. Roll tape.
There is no Biden rule.
It's frankly ridiculous. There is no Biden rule. It doesn't exist.
In a presidential election year, we always take care of the nomination.
And then, of course, the Senate has a job to do. Give that nominee a fair hearing and a timely vote. The Supreme Court needs a full complement of justices on the bench.
I would go forward with the confirmation process as chairman, even a few months before a presidential election.
Right up until September of election year, we put through judges.
The president has done his constitutional duty by sending us Judge Garland.
That starts by standing with President Obama and demanding that Republican senators do their job and vote on his nominee to the Supreme Court.
Just like Clinton said, the senators need to do their job and vote, right? I mean, it's funny how that all works. And we're supposed to take these Democrats serious right now. And then we have some of these Republicans that are all squishy. And now we're having to worry about Mitt Romney. I mean, come on. Do you think the Democrats wouldn't play dirty if they had the majority in the Senate? It's not even playing dirty. I mean, it's their job.
We know that the dynamic is different when you've got a president and a Senate that are in the same party as opposed to a president and a Senate in different parties. You know, now we have a circumstance where I think this Republican Senate is largely there to confirm the president's nominees, not just to the court, but to the various executive agencies that he's run. But I will say, I actually think the Senate should have taken a vote on Merrick Garland. I don't get why, if McConnell had the votes against him, he didn't just put him up. Merrick Garland had presented plenty of reasons why it would have been okay to vote against him. And so I think that the Senate too often consolidates power by not taking votes rather than taking up the tough issues and taking a vote one way or the other.
So we heard House Speaker Nancy Pelosi say she has like arrows up her sleeve or something and options right now. And she was asked about the possibility of impeaching President Trump and Attorney General William Barr. What's your reaction to that?
The Democrats are such hypocrites. They always accuse Trump of violating norms and undermining our institutions. But now, because they don't like the way the nomination process is going, they're talking about packing the court. They're talking about initiating an impeachment against William Barr just as a distraction tool. So it is, in fact, the Democrats in the House of Representatives that are doing more damage to our institutions and to our norms than they ever could accuse President Trump of doing. President Trump is going to do his duty. The Senate ought to do their duty. And then we will have a court, I believe, that is more reflective of the values of this country, that can render decisions for a generation, not as a court to make new law, but to interpret the law as written. And I think that was a major issue in the president's campaign against Hillary Clinton. And I suspect that he will be able to fulfill that campaign promise. And how silly do all the Never Trump Republicans look? I mean, the guy is literally going to remake the Supreme Court for a generation. And what, do they think it would have been better if Hillary Clinton had been making these selections? Of course not.
Yeah, you're right about that. Now, President Trump has made it very clear that he will nominate a woman to the Supreme Court. I'm not a person that's for identity politics. I think the person who's best for the job should take it. That being said, there are a lot of women who are extremely qualified for this position, and there's been some names floating around. Does anyone stand out to you?
Look, I think that the names that we've heard most, Amy Barrett, Barbara Lagoa, those would both be fantastic nominees from the president. I think that, both serving on an appellate court now, plenty qualified. They've both received votes of Democrats in the past for their confirmation processes. So I suspect that one of those two will be selected. And I think either would be a very energizing pick for the president and his movement, and really just the generational opportunity that presents itself to have a court that doesn't view its role as, overriding the legislative process, but interpreting the Constitution and vanguarding the rights of Americans.
So, Matt, I wanted to shift gears here, and I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your new book, Firebrand, without giving it all away. But if you want to maybe share with us a favorite chapter or, just one of your favorite lines from the book.
So chapter 1 of the book is called Sex and Money, and it's about the distractions in Washington, D.C. that pull people away from their obligations to their constituents. I believe that Washington is a fundamentally corrupt place. I think that political action committees are the Vaseline that aids that corruption, and that's why I'm the only Republican in Congress that doesn't take any PAC money from any federal PACs, because I believe that in this political realignment that we're in during the Trump presidency, the power should come from the people. And then we should serve not the interests of multinational corporations of foreign countries, but we should serve the interests of Americans first. That is the political realignment that President Trump has led and that I look forward to being a part of. And
so do you tell any personal stories about the president, perhaps? I know that you've kind of traveled with him quite a bit, and you know him really well. You know the president's family very well. Can we expect any of that in the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was the only Republican who defended Katie Hill when she was the victim of revenge porn. President Trump kept insisting that he thought I was dating her at the time, and so I had to remind him that was not the case, but that I thought chivalry wasn't dead. And I think that if someone is abusing one of your coworkers by releasing revenge porn, it's not the person whose pictures that are being released that's the problem. It's the person who's perpetrating that crime. So the president gives me advice on everything from foreign policy to domestic policy votes to even my romantic pursuits.
Yeah, and I don't think it was just President Trump who thought you were dating Katie Hill. I think there were other people who thought that too. And I remember giving you a hard time. I remember giving you a hard time for defending her. I didn't accuse you of dating her.
There you go.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Steph.
Coming up next, the federal government has had enough of the chaos and the violence in Portland.
Justice has just declared Portland a jurisdiction that allows destruction of property and permits violence.